Welcome everyone to our new norm classroom setup. This is CCNA RNS class, the third out of 4 Cisco modules for CCNA routing and switching essentials. As we all know, we will have a different yet still an effective approach in learning this third module. All our lessons are divided into learning modules per week, and each module will have a video tutorials such as this to discuss the most essential learning course. At the end of each video lessons, you will be answering worksheets along with sample PKA exercises, the usual instructors made PKA versions, and online exams as well. All the relevant updates related to this class will be posted on our Netacad and Module1 LMS. So with that, I welcome you once again to our first ever module in CCNA3 titled Scaling VLANs. I am your CCNA instructor, Engineer Ernie Pineda. Without further ado, let's take a look at this module's objectives. Alright, so for this section's objectives, we're gonna talk about VTP or VLAN Trunking Protocol, Extended VLANs, and DTP or Dynamic Trunking Protocol. So we're gonna try to configure VTP versions 1 and 2, and also take a look at extended VLAN technologies alongside Dynamic Trunking Protocol configuration. 2.2 will be troubleshooting multi-VLAN issues, alright, on the different inter-VLAN routing environment, IP addressing, and VTP and DTP related issues as well. Alright, so I guess let's start off with 2.1. What is VLAN Trunking Protocol? What is VTP? What are extended VLANs? And the definition of DTP. Alright, so let's continue on with our video lesson. So first up, we're going to talk about VTP concepts and operation. Okay, so let's define muna what is VTP. No, it stands for VLAN Trunking Protocol. So in the past, if you are distributing VLANs per switch, okay, what we usually do is we type VLAN names and IDs individually, no, on a single switch. So for example, let's say if you have multiple switches, let's say 2 or more, the thing is whatever VLAN is configured on the first switch, you're doing it multiple times. So, kumbaga parang paulit-ulit natin siyang tinatype on every switch that you have. So, nagiging tedious yung trabaho ng network administrator, no? So, using VLAN or using VTP trunking protocol, a network administrator can be able to manage VLANs on a switch as long as it is configured as what we call as a VTP server. So for example, amongst those 3 switches, you're going to configure 1 switch as your server, and the 2 remaining switch will just copy, alright, whatever VLAN is configured on that server, right? So as it says on the second bullet, the VTP server distributes and synchronizes VLAN info over trunk links to VTP-enabled switches. So, on the table, you will see here different VTP components. So, ito yung mga gagamitin natin, no? So, we have what we call the VTP domain. Okay? So, the VTP domain is actually the name of the domain that is being used by your VTP network. Alright? So all switches that has the same VTP domain are the ones that can only exchange VTP messages. So it is important na pare-pareho dapat sila ng domain. Alright? Those exchanges are what we call as the VTP advertisements. So each switch in a VTP domain sends what we call as periodic global config advertisement from each trunk. So they are sending VTP advertisement to update their neighbor switches. No? The next one is the mode. So I already mentioned one mode a while ago, which is the server. The other two are called client and transparent VTP. We're going to talk about that later on the slide. And then of course, you also have the fourth component is the VTP password. All right, so it's not enough for security purpose. Now, it's not enough that you have the same VTP domain on all switches. No, of course, we're going to need security in order for our VTP network to be secured from unauthorized access. That's why we need a VTP password. All right, so this is the overview. We're gonna show it more specifically later on our PKE exercise. All right, let's proceed to the next slide. Okay, so this one is an in-depth discussion, a more in-depth discussion of what VTP mode is all about. All right, so as I mentioned a while ago, we have the VTP server, the switch server. All right, we have the switch client, VTP client. All right, the VTP transparent. Just take a look at some of the keynotes, no, that you will need to remember when it comes to these three different types of modes. Pag sinabi nating server, all right, he's the one advertising the VTP domain VLAN info to other VTP enabled switches on the same domain. So from the word server, no, sa kanya nanggagaling lahat ng info. So we configure the VLAN IDs, we configure the VLAN numbers. Okay, we create, we delete, we rename VLAN info on that particular switch. All right, and then yung trabaho niya is to propagate or to advertise those VTP information to other switch clients. Alright, as long as they are part of that domain. So, dyan papasok si number 2 mode, which is the VTP client. Alright, so on the second bullet definition, sabi dito, the client, okay, only stores the VLAN info for the entire domain while the switch is on. So, from the term, no, as you can see, from the term, okay, we have, right, diba? Familiar kayo sa server and client. So, server is the one providing the info. The advertisement client is the one receiving that advertisement. All right, the other mode is called the transparent. Okay, VTP transparent mode. So, in this mode, when you configure your switch to become VTP transparent or to use VTP transparent mode, that switch will not participate in the VTP advertisement exchanges, but except it forwards that advertisement to other VTP clients. So it means whenever an advertisement passes through this transparent switch, it does not save any VTP information. Instead, it just passes it on to other VTP clients and other VTP servers on the network. Alright? So, yun sila. Hope nakuha natin yung concept and operation of the different VTP modes. Okay, so this is another comparison amongst those modes. So you can have an in-depth learning on this one and even a demonstration on our NetAcad link, no? So ito sila, the differences when it comes to their job, okay, when it comes to VLAN trunking protocol. All right, so as you can see, no, both the server and the client participates fully, right, while the transparent server only forwards VTP advertisement. Okay, so yan lang sila. Alright, so this is how they actually exchange VTP advertisements. So when it comes to the VLAN trunking protocol environment. So we have the summary advertisement. the advertisement request is more like a three-way handshake, right? That is happening between these two switches, all right? As long as the parameters are correct, all right? As long as the parameters are correct, the domains are correct, the password are matching between the switch, the BTP network looks good, then automatically they will have this type of BTP advertisement. All right. So the subset advertisement, advertisement request, and the summary advertisement. All right. So let's take a look at the different versions. In CCNA3, we're gonna use versions 1 and 2. Though we already have the newest version of BTP as mentioned here, the version 3, but it's not part of, unfortunately, it's not part of this course yet. All right, so as you can see, now the difference between the two versions, okay, it's version 2 just supports more of the protocols or the standard. All right, both of them supports normal range VLANs only. So when you say normal range VLAN, we're talking about the standard normal range VLAN. Okay, and yeah, so to switch version, we have certain command to deploy on the switch, but by default, of course, it uses version 1. Okay. All right, so let's proceed with the command lines. Of course, we're talking about switches. All right, so guys, please take note of the useful verification command. So number 1, yeah, we have what we call show VTP status. All right, so when you issue that on the switch, so I take note, right? So it is entered on privilege mode. It is on privilege mode, right? So show BTP status. It will show the following, no? So it will show the BTP version capable and running, the domain. Okay, it will show the domain name configured. As you can see here, wala pa siya. Okay, the version of the BTP that is being run. Okay, what version capable or version ready capable is that switch? So it can run from 1 to 3. Alright, yung pinaka-importanting kailangan nating makita dito, of course, is the operating mode. Alright, so as you can see, this switch is configured as a transparent BTP switch. Alright, number of VLANs supported locally, and of course, the number of existing VLANs that is pre-configured on that switch. Alright, so yun yung mga info. So we actually use this command just to check, particularly lalo na to, no? Very important. VTP operating mode. Okay, so yan siya. Okay, so moving on with our VLAN trunking protocol configuration overview. So this is a sample topology, no? Sample setup of what is supposed to look like. For example, if you will run your network through switches with multiple VLAN. So for example, you have 3 switch setup, and then you also have your VLAN IDs, as you can see, right? So you have your VLAN 10, 20, 30 on the other side. Of course, in CCNA2, we learned that whenever you have this kind of VLAN setup, VLANs on the same ID are the ones that can only communicate with each other. So in that case, PC1 and PC4 should have a successful ping. Alright, PC2 and PC5 will have a successful ping as well, as long as PC3 and 6. All the other pings, since we don't have any router to route packets in between VLANs, so that's not yet possible. So hindi naman yun yung concern natin for this lesson. So what we wanted to do is to try to automate how to run VLANs between switches. So as you can see, what are the different modes that you can that you notice, no, for the switches? So for example, here we have the server, VTP mode server. We also have the client, S2 and S3. Alright, so these are the steps to configure BTP. We just have to follow this guideline. Now, number one, you will need to configure the BTP server first. So amongst the switches, you identify which will serve as the server. So in this case, we identified as S1 to be the server. The next procedure is for you to configure the BTP domain, a name, and a password. So as I said, okay, the domain name must be the same on all switches configured that is running on that particular server. Next, after we're done configuring steps 1 and 2, the next thing you need to configure are the clients. So you just have to change the mode of switches that will act as clients. So in that case, that is S2 and S3. Okay, and then after that, just go ahead and configure VLANs only on the BTP server. So how many VLANs do we have here? We have 3, right? So itong tatlong VLAN na to will just be configured on that particular server. Okay, and then after that, all you have to do is to verify if the BTP clients receive any VLAN information coming from the server. So as you can see now, guys, we only need to configure the server with all the VLAN info. Okay, and then after that, okay, the clients, once that the domain and the server are configured properly, the client will just copy, all right, or receive the advertisements from the server. So whatever VLANs ang kinonfigure or configured on that particular server, that VLAN information will be advertised on the BTP clients. So for example, when you configured VLAN 10, 20, and 30 on this particular server, all those VLAN information will be carried over to S3 and S2. Of course, as long as the domain name and password are acceptable in terms of their preferences. Okay? So we're good. So ganun lang siya kadali, no? Alright, so let's proceed with the configuration proper. No? So listen very closely here, since you will be doing your own packet tracer exercises for those who have computers at home. For those who have not, okay, don't worry, because you will still be doing a worksheet. All right, yun nga lang, on a paper-based type of answer sheets. All right, so the only disadvantage, of course, is that while you're doing the configuration, you can actually test whether the config is actually working or not. Okay, compared with the actual packet tracer software that we are using. Okay, but anyway, here's the configuration procedure. So the first thing you need to do is to configure the BTP server. All right, so for example, for S1, so we are on S1, so we need to enter global mode. All right, so config T muna. Okay, under after privilege, config T to enter global mode. And then what we do is just to type this command right here. All right, BTP space mode space server. And after that, okay, it will give you this message. Okay, to check if that switch accepted the command, okay, we issue the command show BTP status. Right, so once you've issued that, I need you to focus on that mode right there. It's supposed to be changed to server already. And of course, once you do that, we talk about the configuration revision. It will be reset back to 0. Alright, the revision number will be set back to 0. And the number of existing VLANs, bakit 5? Eh, wala pa man tayong in-enter na VLAN. Why 5? Okay, that is because we learned in CCNA2 na all switches must have or have their own default VLANs, and that is the default VLAN 1, and of course the numbers for the other protocols 1002 to 1005. So when you count that, it's 5. Okay, total of 5. So, yun lang yung mga kailangan nating information or status that we need to verify. No? Moving on. Next, after you configure your switch to act as the server, the next thing you need to do is to configure the domain name. So, ganito lang siya kasimple. So, the command still starts with the VTP, domain, space, and the name of the domain that you want. So, in this case, ang ginamit nating pangalan ng domain is CCNA. On your packet tracer files, it will actually tell you what domain name to use. Okay? So, sasabihin niya no, kung ano yung domain name na gagamitin. So, just follow the exact domain name so that your score will be counted. Alright, so after the domain name, okay, the next thing you need to configure is the password. So, the command for that is just BTP space password space the password that you like. Okay? So, in this case, ang ginamit natin is Cisco 1234. Of course, in a real-world environment, no, that is not acceptable. No, you should be using a stronger password for that. Okay, now to check the BTP password for that particular server, okay, for example, let's say you just wanted to review the password entered, okay, you issue the command show VTP password. So, ito siya. Alright, so this is the entire part of the server configuration. Next. Alright, so for clients, okay, ang hirap ng client, no? As you can see, no? You only have to configure the same command, okay, except for the mode. So instead of the server, okay, papalitan mo lang yung mode ng client. Okay, ganun lang siya kasimple, no? So BTP mode client, okay, you need to configure also the same domain and of course the same password so that it can communicate properly with the server. So once these two entities or these two elements does not match, okay, magkaka-problem tayo with our VTP advertisement. Your client will not accept any advertisement from the server. Okay, if the domain or either of the domain and the password are incorrect. So be careful whenever you try to configure that. All right. Alright, next. So once you've configured everything, no, the server is okay, the domains are good, passwords are good, clients are client, is a server. The next thing you need to do is to configure now VLAN information to the server. So as you can see, now we are still at S1. This acting as our server. So ang gagawin mo lang, alright, just the usual. Alright, so just type in the VLAN space, the ID that you want. So VLAN 10, for example, the name of that VLAN, which is sales. Dire-diretso lang. VLAN 20, the name is marketing. VLAN 30, the name is accounting. So if you have other VLANs that you wanted to enter, just push them there. Okay lang yan. Dire-diretso lang siya. Then, once you're done, just click End. Okay? Now, to verify if that switch accepted the VLAN information that you've entered. Okay, so we have here that information. Whenever you issue the command show VLAN brief, lilitaw to. Yan sila. Of course, the defaults are ito sila. So, hindi natin papakialaman yan because that is the default VLANs na nakasave na sa switch for a certain protocol. Okay, so you have your VLAN 1. Pero ito yung mga in-enter natin kanina, right? So, you have the sales, marketing, accounting, nandun sila. So, they're all active. Okay. Now, if you want to check also to verify the status of the BTP, show BTP status lang tayo. Alright, the version that is being run, version 1. Alright, domain name is CCNA. It doesn't show the password. We have different command for that. But ito yung pinaka-importante, no? It shows the operating mode of that particular switch. Alright, bakit nadagdagan yung configuration revision number natin? Bakit nadagdagan? Anyone? Wild guess? Okay, that's probably yes, that is correct. Okay, kasi nag-enter tayo ng mga information on that switch. So, any information that you've entered, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, will affect the revision number. So, ibig sabihin, pinakailaman mo, meron kang ginawa, nag-enter ka ng data doon sa switch. Alright, that's why the revision number incremented in terms of its value. Alright? And then it also counts the number of existing VLANs usable. Okay? So, ganun lang siya kasimple. Let's proceed. Alright, so after you've entered all the VLAN info on the server, it's now time to check if your clients, the switch clients, was able to accept the advertisement from the switch VTP server. So when you go to S2 and then you issue the command show VLAN brief, alright, it should show the same VLAN info that was entered on the server. So lilitaw siya. Okay, so you have the same exact VLAN information as with the server. Okay, again, okay, when you try to verify what VTP status is being run on that particular switch, ganun din. So show VTP status. Alright, it will show you the operating mode. This time S2 is acting as client. Number of existing VLAN is 8, same with the server. And of course, the revision number also incremented. So, nagpalit din siya. Alright, so it means it copied everything, all the information from the switch server natin kanina. Alright, so sige. Of course, no? If any of the VLAN information has not received fully, for example, may kulang, or this VLAN information is missing, no? Whenever you issue this command on S2, which is acting supposed to be as client, tapos hindi lumitaw to. So it means there might be a problem with your VTP network, no? So it's either, so to troubleshoot mo yan, so it's either the wire, the trunk lines are not working, the domains and the passwords does not match. So may mga ganong issue. So I think on the latter part of the worksheet, you will have a sample PKA there that will make you troubleshoot an existing VTP network. So take note of that. Okay. So I think this is just, yeah, the numbers of the VLAN, normal VLAN ranges. So I think familiar na kayo dito from CCNA2, right? So it is from 1 to 1005. The default VLAN number is 1. So take note, no? Normal range VLAN is from 1 to 1005. Alright, that is the normal range, no? Extended range is from 1006 up to 4094. So in a single switch, okay, if a certain switch supports an extended range VLAN, you can create up to more than 4,000 VLAN IDs. So ang dami na nun. No? So imagine having a network with 4,000 virtual LAN. Okay? So all of the information are stored on VLAN point stat. Okay. Sige. Alright, next. So this was just a brief review on how to create VLAN on a particular switch. So we already did this one on the server a while ago. No? So mabilisan na lang. So to do that, just go on with ito lang kayo sa global mode, and then just type in the command VLAN space and then the ID number. Alright, and then after that, just have to identify it accordingly. What will be the name of that particular VLAN? Okay, so for example, VLAN 10 or VLAN 20, enter name student. Okay. Alright, next, of course, after you've created the VLAN, it's now time to assign ports. So, by default, all of the ports are part of VLAN 1. No? So, this is the time na paghiwa-hiwalayin mo na yung mga port numbers and assign them accordingly to a particular VLAN. So, for example, let's say, eto siya, no? So, ito yung command natin, global mode. Okay, you issue the VLAN name, VLAN ID, and then the name. And then after that, in order for you to move to port. For example, ililipat natin yung port 18, for example, and then we're going to port 18 will be part of VLAN 20. Alright? So, ang kailangan mo munang gawin is to change the mode, no? So, we already talked about that in CCNA2, no? So, switch port mode, access muna. Pag access, ibig sabihin, papunta sa mga host. We have the other one, which is the trunk. So, pag trunk, it means that it is used as a trunking port for two switches to exchange VTP advertisement, for example, or router on a stick setup. Okay, so trunk line. So those are two different types of modes. Okay. All right, so let's proceed. Next topic will be the discussion of the dynamic trunking protocol. So this is just a brief discussion, since most of the time when you are trying to configure trunk lines, kumbaga parang we see to it that trunk lines are configured properly, no? But there are times that you will need to use a dynamic type of trunking technique just to be able to turn on trunk configuration. So we all know the purpose and the different modes, no, when it comes to trunk procedure. So trunk lines are the one that that is being used to pass on the VTP advertisements and also to enable router on a stick setup, yung tinatawag nating inter-VLAN routing, no? So you should identify your trunk lines properly and then set them well according to their port usage sa mga switch. Okay, again, misconfiguration of trunk lines may result to unfunctional network, no? So malaki yung epekto niya, no? Dun lang sa pag-set ng mga tamang trunk lines. So for example, let's say it's supposed to be trunking, the line is supposed to be trunking, but you misconfigured it to work as an access in terms of mode, no? So malaki yung impact nun sa network. So be very careful, no, when configuring trunk lines. Now when it comes to DTP, pag sinabi natin DTP, it stands for Dynamic Trunking Protocol. So this is actually the trunk negotiation that is managed by DTP. And then of course, we all know that DTP is a Cisco proprietary protocol. So it means all Cisco switches uses this this protocol or this technology, no? So they are automatically enabled on both Catalyst 2960 and 3560 switches. Okay, so to enable trunking from a Cisco switch to a device that does not support DTP, pinapwersa natin siya, okay, using the command switchboard mode trunk as is, no? So we just tell the port or the port of that particular switch to change mode automatically or to change mode manually to trunk. And also we have the command switchboard none negotiate. So example of trunking procedure is shown on these two topologies. Now you have S1, S2, S3. So for example, let's say in order for S1, let's say this one is a server, S2 is a client, S3 is client. In order for S1 to exchange advertisement on both client servers, itong linyang to is supposed to be trunking. Alright, so there are several ways for you to be able to attain trunking procedure. So it's either you configure port 1 as trunk, automatic as trunk, or manually as trunk. Port F01 of S2, switch port mode, trunk. Ganun din. So automatic, this will trunk. On the other side, if you're gonna run DTP, alright, we have different combination of modes, okay, that can result to either trunk or access. So, kailangan kabisado rin po yun, no? So, for example, let's say when you configure this one as the dynamic auto, the other one is dynamic auto, ano ba yung magiging result niya? Alright? So, what will be the result? So, we will see later on the graph. Ito siya. Okay, so identification muna ng mga switch port mode. Okay, we have access. Okay, the most common that we already tackled so far is the access and the trunk. So ito siya, no? So access becomes a non-trunk interface. Commonly, it is being used papunta na sa mga host. Alright? Papunta na sa mga data receivers natin. Trunk. Okay, so alam na natin kung ano yung purpose niya. Okay, usually used on neighboring routers or neighboring switches whenever you're running BTP or router on a stick setup. Alright, so dapat naka-trunk lines yung mga yon. So the three new trunks are called usually the dynamic. This one are yung mga hindi pa natin nagagamit or you haven't heard them before. So we have the switchboard mode dynamic auto. Alright, we also have the switchboard mode dynamic desirable, switchboard mode DD, ang shortcut dyan, switchboard mode DA, the other one, dynamic auto. And then we have the switchboard mode non-negotiate. So, in terms of the trunking procedure, all you have to do is to familiarize yourself with what kind of combination in terms of the dynamic trunking protocol you're going to use. So, let's say, for example, when you combine dynamic auto to dynamic auto, the result will be an access port. So, ganun lang siya kasimple. For example, let's say switch 1, switch 2, port 1, port 1. You configure them both dynamic auto, DA. Ang maging result nun will be access. Alright, maliwanag yan, ha? Alright, the next one is, for example, pinalitan natin ng dynamic desirable. Let me just clear my screen. So, dynamic desirable to dynamic auto, the result will be trunk. So, isang konting change lang yan, no? So, combination of DD to DA, the result will be trunk. Combination of DD to dynamic desirable, again, it will be trunk. Dynamic desirable to trunk, the result will be trunk. Alright? So, let's go back to the dynamic auto. Look at this. Now, dynamic auto access yan. Dynamic auto to desirable, trunk yan. Dynamic auto to trunk yan. Dynamic access to access, dynamic auto to access will result to access. So, you just have to take note of the pairing of different modes, no? But of course, when you do, let's say, for example, let's say, ito yung sabi ko kanina, dynamic desirable, dynamic trunk, so it can all lead to that particular result, no? Whether trunking ba siya or access. So, madali lang naman tandaan yan, no? Auto is access. Okay? The rest, DD, DA, trunk. DA trunk is trunk. Kapag auto to, tapos access yung kaparis niya, access din siya. Alright? Ganun lang siya kasimple. Alright, so manual trunk, when you paired it with the dynamic auto, magiging trunk. Trunk paired to a dynamic desirable will result to trunk. Trunk and trunk will also result to trunk. So, ito lang yung medyo hindi tama. For example, when you try to compare trunk with an access, check natin yon. Okay, paired, pinair mo yung isang port ng switch papunta sa isang trunk and then the other one is access, it will result to limited connectivity. Hindi talaga mag-uusap yan. So, trunk supposed to be talking with the trunk line. Access is also going to be an access. So, same scenario, when you pair access to trunk, it will also result to limited connectivity. So, ibig sabihin, failure yan. Alright? So, here's one way for you to be able to check the DTP interface. No? So, we have the command show DTP space interface to verify dynamic trunking protocol that is used for that particular line. Okay? So, proceed tayo. So, this is the worksheet or the packet tracer, sample packet tracer file to be taken, actually to be answered at home. Alright, so I think it is already given, uploaded on your Edmodo and NetAcad class files. So it has the packet tracer version wherein you will try to follow the sample codes for you to successfully configure a sample VLAN and VTP and also a DTP configuration. So you're just going to play around with the command that was mentioned on the previous part of this video. Alright? So, eto siya. Okay, the other one is the configuration of extended VLANs. Alright, again, it has some sample codes inside in order for you to configure the extended VLAN for each router. Alright, so this will be all part of the actual and written worksheets, just in case you don't have any device at home. But of course, if you don't have a computer to run packet tracer software, okay, Cisco now has the packet tracer mobile version. So that is now available at the App Store and Play Store. So you just have to download it and then install it on your smartphones. And using that, you can now answer packet tracer files using your smartphones. Okay, medyo tiyagaan nga lang because the interface is far different when you are using a desktop version. Alright, kasi nga maliit yung screen and then you need to type certain commands using smartphone keyboard. So medyo iba lang, okay? When it comes to interface, medyo tiyagaan nga lang sa mobile version. But still, it's an added tool na pwede nating magamit. Okay? Alright, next, the last part of this video is on how to troubleshoot multi-VLAN issues. So let's just make this quick because we also have, I think, a worksheet or a packet tracer file that is focused on troubleshooting naman. Alright, so the first one is directing you on how to remove VLAN. Alright, so for example, let's say naset mo na yung mga VLANs na kailangan, no? But all of a sudden, there are meron kang VLAN na na-enter na hindi na dapat part or hindi na dapat kasali. So, all you have to do is to simply delete or to remove that particular VLAN using the command no VLAN space and then the VLAN ID. Okay, ganun lang siya kasimple. If there are ports assigned to that particular VLAN that was deleted, automatically those ports will go back to the default VLAN 1. Alright, so it will remain inactive pala. So they will become inactive until you forcefully or you manually assign them to a new VLAN. Okay? So ganun lang siya kasimple. Alright? So ito siya. Okay? Alright, next. So we also have yung mga tinatawag nating switchboard issues, for example. So let's say a certain port is a certain line is connected to a wrong port of that particular switch. Okay, that is not part of a particular VLAN. And also, if a certain port was misconfigured to be trunk, okay, trunk mode. For example, in this case, yung VLAN 10, yung port 11, dapat trunk, dapat access yan. But sometimes, no, when you try to look at the interface property, naka-trunk pala siya. So that will not work. Okay, so you just have to be wary of that or wary of that. Okay, kailangan tine-check mo siya palagi. Alright, next, we have, for example, let's say yung tinatawag nating incorrect default VLAN that was configured on a particular switch. So it will have an impact on the router and a stick setup, particularly on the trunk port going to the router. Okay, lalo na if you are running sub-interfaces. So in CCNA2, no, ito yung medyo nakakalito ng konti, no, especially when you are creating sub-interfaces for a certain VLAN ID, no? To minimize nga yung confusion doon, di ba, we suggested to use the VLAN ID as the subinterface number or matching the subinterface number. So if your VLAN ID is 10, just create subinterface 0.10, right? If your VLAN ID is 30, just use .30. All right, and then of course you configure or you try to incorporate that with the .1Q standard using the exact ID number. So minsan nagkaka-problema din doon, no? So instead of issuing the that encapsulation .1Q standard, .1Q number, nag-iiba sila. So nagkaka palit-palit yung mga ID numbers natin. Okay? So to verify switch configuration, so we have this useful command. So meron tayong show interfaces, the port that you wanted to check, and then the space, switch port. Alright? So ganun lang siya. So when you try to issue that, for example, for this particular port, it will tell you if the switch port is enabled, okay, what mode it is running. So in this case, it is static access. Alright? And the VLAN, no? Yung the VLAN na member, yung port na yon, or the VLAN ID that is kumbaga parang kung saang VLAN ID siya nabibilang or member, parang gano'n. Okay? Kung anong VLAN ID siya member. Okay, that particular port. Okay, yon. Okay, sige. And then of course, show running config. Okay, show run. Alright, will give you other information like this one. So, ipapakita niya lahat ng mga ports in their modes. So, pag meron ka nakita dyan, for example, internet fast ethernet, interface fast ethernet 0/5, for example, switch port mode trunk siya. We're supposed to be, dapat hindi siya trunk. It's supposed to be an access. So, all you have to do is to, di ba, change that, right? So, you just go ahead and enter interface fast ethernet 0/5, enter switch port mode access instead of trunk. Alright? So, ganun siya. Okay, so this is the same with the router on a stick setup in terms of the default VLAN number. Alright, so mismatches in terms of the default VLAN. Okay, on a particular port. Pareho lang din siya. No? Okay, ito yung nabanggit ko sa inyo kanina. Ito yung sinasabi ko in terms of the .1Q standard. So instead of encapsulation .1Q space and then the number of the exact ID number, so namamali. So instead of, for example, let's say encapsulation .1Q10 that matches VLAN 10, ang nakalagay is 100. So sumobra ng 0. Alright? So in that case, the encapsulation .1Q ID doesn't match the VLAN destination number, which is 10. So merong problema yan, mismatch yan. So, kailangan nating ayusin yung .1Q, instead of 100, we replace it with 10. Okay. Of course, IP address assignments, no? Ito yung medyo very common na mistake. So, for example, in this case, PC1 is part of VLAN 10. So, VLAN 10 has the network address 172.17.10.0. So, dun pa lang sa since /24 ito, sa third octet pa lang, kitang-kita mo na muli na yung network address niya. So, instead of 10, ang ginagamit niya is network 20. No? So, mali. No? So, 20.0 network to, whereas the network is supposed to be 10.0 network. Alright? So, ano yung papalitan natin dito? So, we need to change the IP address of PC1 to 10.21. So, ganun lang siya. That's how you troubleshoot and correct the problem. Okay? So, to verify IP address and subnet mask configuration issues, of course, we have the show run. Walang kamatayang show run. Alright, to check. Okay, yung iba, no? They na-overlook nila or they are afraid. Ewan ko, no? Whenever they had trouble when it comes to troubleshooting, no? ang hirap-hirap na i-enter yung show run, right? Pero kung titingnan mo, this is the very useful tool. Nandiyan lang lahat yung mga kailangan mo. So instead of just looking at your topology, of course, wala kang makikita dyan, no? Hindi mo makikita, but just by looking at the ports outside, no? It's still very relevant to look at the configuration. Baka may mga namali kang mga IP address pala dyan na hindi pala nandun. So the show run can tell you that. Okay, the other one is the IP config, of course, IP space config to check on the IP address na naka-assign sa host. So in this case, ito nga yung mali, yung 20.21. Instead of 20.21, we need to replace it with 10.21. So on your worksheet, packet tracer activity files, merong mga ganyang mga activities, okay, wherein you will try to look for the problem or the issues that is causing errors sa network. Alright? Or bakit hindi nagpiping yung isang computer? Okay naman yung VLAN. Okay naman yung VTP. Okay? So, bottom line pala, yung IP address assignment lang ang problema. So, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. So, this would be another worksheet on top of the other worksheet for this first module na kailangan nating makomply for our first and second week. So, medyo marami na. And of course, kasama na rin dito yung mga chapter exams ni Cisco. Alright, kasama rin yan. And, of course, okay, kung meron tayong mga issues when it comes to addressing router and SIG interfaces, we also have common problems that you will also need to check when running VTP. Alright, when running VTP na to, yung ginawa natin kanina, bakit hindi nagpapadala ng advertisement yung VTP server? So, these are some of the identified problems. So, number one, incompatible VTP versions. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? Okay, switch 1, okay, kinonfigure mo yung server, running siya, VTP version 1. Okay, pagdating mo kay S2, okay, client mo, server yon, tama. Kaya lang, hindi mo alam, si S2 pala, it was pre-configured with VTP version 2. So, version 1 and version 2 definitely will not communicate with each other. So, kailangan mong ayusin yun. Huh? So, it's either you change S1 to S2 or change S2 to version 1. Ganun lang kasimple. Number 2, password issues. Okay, mismatches. Alright, so nabanggit na natin yan kanina. Number 3, domain name. Alright, ang simple, no? Whatever domain name is used on the VTP server must be the same domain name configured on S2. Next, number 4. Ito naman, yung ewan ko na lang kung hindi na mapapansin to. Bakit hindi nag-advertise ng VTP advertisement? Bakit hindi nagpapadala ng update yung server? Baka naman walang server na sinet. All of the switches are running on client mode. So naghihintayan sila. Alright? So, one of your activities, merong ganon. No? You will need to check the modes of particular switches and then make sure na mayroong isa doon that is acting as server. Okay? For a BTP advertisement to occur. Okay? The last one is the incorrect configuration of revision number, especially for old switches that is already pre-configured. Kaya nga, it's best, for example, let's say when you have old switches or old switch na kailangan mo i-configure and isasama mo siya sa network, much better if kumbaga burahin mo muna siya. Try to reset factory or change mode na kaagad from server to transparent maybe so that the revision number will be set back to 0. Okay? So, yon, no? Alright, next, we have, again, some reminders when it comes to troubleshooting DTP naman to, no? With trunks. So, number 1, yung mga trunk mode mismatches. Yan. So, nabanggit na natin kanina, no? Access cannot communicate with trunk modes. Alright? Dynamic auto to dynamic auto will lead to a particular result, access. Diba? Dynamic desirable to auto trunk. So if you are using DTP, then you must make sure that you are using the proper combination in order for you to come up with either trunk or access mode lines. Next, allowed VLANs on trunks. Okay, by default, all VLANs are allowed, okay, to pass on trunk. But sometimes, meron kang mga sineset na VLAN allowable trunk that can only, VLAN IDs that can only pass on that particular trunk line. So, check mo rin dapat yon. So, check ka ng check, ayaw pa rin mag-ping, yun pala yung VLAN 10 is not allowed to pass a certain trunk requirements. Okay? So, that is also a problem. The other one is the native VLAN mismatches. Okay? Native VLAN, when native VLAN do not match, okay, native VLAN sa kabila is, for example, 10, ang sinet mo sa router on a stick or on a router, ibang native VLAN number or ibang .1 queue number in terms of standard. Alright? Sa switches naman, make sure that both trunk lines are using the same native VLAN. Okay? So, isa rin yun. So, you need to check also the native VLAN IDs. Okay? Of course, by default, if you haven't changed anything, by default, the native VLAN is 1. Okay? Pero kapag pinalitan mo yung native VLAN on the other side, make sure na isunod mo yung isa. So, pag ginawa mong native VLAN 10, okay, on the other side, the other trunk link should use the same native VLAN. Okay, gano'n lang siya kasimple. So, this one is also a worksheet for you to be able to practice on how to troubleshoot DTP issues. So, medyo marami-rami na. Alright, so eksakto na for study from home setup. Alright, and then I guess that is our first module. No? Siksik na siksik yung first module natin. And then it also comes in with, I think 5 or 6 or even 7 sample packet tracer files that you can practice at home. Of course, if you have any concerns or questions, you can message or send chat or message sa akin. I don't entertain FB chats. Is that I don't entertain pero I'm not into FB kasi palagi. So, much better if you can just send message inside Net3 classes, which is our official channel. And also, dun sa Edmodo LMS natin. So, mas maganda if dun na lang. Okay? Para ando lahat yung communication natin. It is recorded. Okay? So, yeah, with that, the worksheets, I'm just going to mention which worksheet are you going to answer for this particular module. And then if you have questions, just send me message, of course, within the working hours. Okay, wag naman yung alas 9 ng gabi, alas 10 ng gabi. Mag-send kayo ng message. Alright, so yeah, that's it. See you on our next module. Goodbye.